I believe a wise man once said, look, let's get right to it. This is a John Mayer Silver Sky SE 2023 edition. Now, in the past, I reviewed the other version of the Silver Sky SE guitar, and I reviewed the core model guitar. So I've tried all three versions of the John Mayer PRS guitar, and I have to say that this, to me, is the best overall one. So for those of you who don't know, right now we're doing a season of The Experiment, the series where I explore a single gear category in extreme detail over an extended period of time. And the series as a whole is sponsored by PRS, and I explained the sponsorship in video 1. And for those of you who think that there's this conspiracy that PRS is sending me their best guitars and then they're going to send you something else, PRS didn't send me this particular guitar. I bought this guitar with my own money. I used a different name, not even the same last name, and it was shipped to a completely different address. So there's no way that PRS or Sweetwater knew that I would be getting this guitar and reviewing it for the channel. So let's get right to talking about what makes this guitar different from the other two Silver Skies and why I believe it is the best version of the Silver Sky line. Now, if you're familiar with PRS guitars, you'll know that we always have 3 per side tuners, and in this case we have the non-locking vintage style tuners. They turn well, they work fine. Okay, standard things here. We also have a very standard PRS nut. I will say in general, the PRS guitar's nut can be cut slightly lower if you like lower action, but like I said before, it is completely playable out of box, so there's no issue with how it's cut. Okay, now we get to the big difference between this guitar and the prior model. Now in the video where I compared the SE to the core model Silver Sky, the thing that I talked most about being different is the neck. Yes, the guitars have different woods, and yes, they're made in different parts of the world, and yes, the core model has locking tuners, fine. To me, the biggest difference was the neck feel. If you like a great Stratocaster with a thinner neck, even if you have $3,000, you probably should buy the SE version because it's a thinner neck version of the USA version. If you absolutely need a guitar with a slightly thicker neck and you have $3,000, I guess you should buy the USA version, but at the same time, if you have $3,000, you can buy a lot of other guitars with a thicker neck that you might think are a little bit more special. Just being honest, since this is non-sponsored. Now, I don't have those two guitars anymore and I can't compare them right in front of you, but I can tell you that this neck, it really reminds me of the core model in terms of its shape and its overall thickness. Now, if you go on the PRS site and look at the specs of the thickness of this neck compared to the prior model, it's going to look like it's not a big difference by just the numbers itself. But keep in mind, I bought this guitar without looking at the specs. I picked it up and immediately noticed the thickness of this neck. So although the numbers may not seem like a big difference, it is very noticeable in my opinion. Now, since this is of course modeled after a Stratocaster, it's going to be very different than the other guitars in the SE line. For one, we have a very, very round 8.5-inch radius, and it is very noticeably round when compared to a lot of the other PRS guitars. And we also have a 25.5-inch scale length, and as you probably know, a lot of the PRS guitars tend to have a 25 or below in scale length, so it's definitely unique in that regard. Now, one other huge detail I want to mention about this neck is the fact that it has a very, very thin satin finish. And this finish is so thin that it almost feels unfinished. So there's definitely no gloss or anything sticky on the back, and there's definitely no gloss on the front of the fretboard either. And to be completely honest, I think this is one area where PRS can improve. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is not objectively true, but my intuition tells me that more people today love the satin type finishes on their guitars over gloss finishes. So I think that if PRS had this nice satin on some other models, that might be really good for the SE line. But again, that's really personal preference, so tell me in the comments below if you prefer the satin finish or the gloss finishes. And finally, we have a bolt-on neck, unlike the other PRS guitars. So if you're someone who really believes in that idea of having a bolt-on neck because it has more snap and more attack, you have that option in the SE line. And if you want to know about any of the other guitars I'm using in the experiment, you can check out the SE Experiment Sweetwater list below. And of course, if you're going to purchase one of these guitars, using that link is an easy way to help out the channel with no additional cost to you. Of course, we have a cutaway on the front of the guitar like PRS guitars always have, and that really allows for comfort in the high fret access. And although this guitar is a bolt-on instead of the normal PRS set neck, the bolt-on is sculpted fairly nice, and you can put your thumb at the base of the neck and easily get your pinky to the high fret with no issue. I mean, I can easily reach way above the last fret. So high fret access is not going to be an issue with this guitar whatsoever. Now, I went with the blue body because my first mid-tier guitar was a used Mexican Strat that was also blue, so it felt like buying a blue guitar like this would be coming full circle for me. And I think the blue looks really nice with the gray PRS birds and the gray signature and the gray tuning pegs. So although I personally think the gray version looks the best out of the colors, nostalgia brought me to the blue. The control layout is also slightly different than a standard Strat, so to speak. We have a master volume, we have a tone knob that controls the neck and middle pickup, and then we have a separate tone knob that just controls the bridge. Now, this is a pretty common mod that people make on their Strats anyway, so I'm happy that it's included as the stock version. And then of course we have a standard 5-way switch. But I will say, the second I used this 5-way switch, I was immediately brought back to the other Silver Sky guitars that I had, because these switches are extra clicky and nice to use. And the tip of the switch is also a bit more comfortable. It's larger, it's a fun shape, and you know, these are not the biggest details in the world, but when you're playing a lot of different guitars, it's always nice to have something that feels slightly different, so I really enjoy that personally. By the way, if you ever have a question about the gear that I use in these videos, I have a list below you can check out with all of my most used gear, and I also have a bit of a description for each item that explains why I use it and when I use it and so on, so you can check that out linked below. So we're just gonna go through all of the pickups. We have our standard Fender clean tone, everything at 12. So they sound like good single coil pickups. Me personally, the only single coil sounds that I really like on the Strat are the neck and the middle combined, and that sounds great on this guitar to me as well. If you're a fan of single coil pickups, I don't see why you wouldn't like these, but yeah, for me, it's about all of the humbuckers. So I'm actually working on a few completely free masterclasses that I'm going to release via email only. So subscribe to the Guitarcraft newsletter link below if you're interested in those coming lessons. So let's talk about the bridge, because this is something that's also unique for this guitar. I'm pretty sure that PRS on every SE guitar with a floating bridge only offers their 6-screw design. I mean, they have a 2-point Floyd Rose type thing as well, but for the most part, it's their 6-screw design, which is a beautiful, amazing bridge. It's the best 6-screw design bridge I've ever tried. Okay, for the SE version of this guitar, we have a 2-point trem, which is strange because they don't offer it anywhere else. But then we also have these vintage style saddles. It works fine, it tunes fine, it intonates easily, so there's no complaints. I'm just confused as to why they went with this choice. So every John Mayer guitar, no matter what company it comes from, it always comes with all 4 springs in the back and the trem flush against the body, because I don't believe he likes to use the trem on his guitars. However, this bridge can be floated, and that's how I prefer it. So to get this floating, I didn't remove any springs. I just backed off on the claw a little bit until the bridge starts to come off the body of the guitar. So this is still pretty much set up like the factory. I just reduced the claw pressure a tiny bit. So the question is, how good does this bridge stay in tune from the factory? No nut adjustments, no new strings, no lubing, nothing. And for all of the standard whammy bar stuff, it stays in tune really, really well. Of course, you're not going to be doing crazy dive bombs and stuff like that with this type of a bridge, but for the normal use, it works really, really well. stays in tune plenty well for things like that, and that's really what you should be doing with this bridge. Anything more than that is kind of just a bit ridiculous. So. But of course, they do make an SC with a Floyd Rose, so if you really need the crazy stuff, you can get that guitar. So I want to conclude by talking about this guitar in relation to the other SC guitars, because again, when I got my first Silver Sky back in 2022, that was the first PRS guitar that I had ever played for an extended period of time, and I had really no idea how to compare it to a standard PRS guitar. But now that I've been playing PRS guitars pretty much exclusively for over a month, I have a better understanding of where this guitar fits into the rest of the line. One thing that I've noticed about all the PRS guitars when trying them all is that they have great tuning stability, they're very reliable, but they also tend to have chunkier necks. When I tried the Rosewood version of this guitar, nothing jumped out at me as something that is special. It was just a really good Strat-like guitar. But this guitar to me feels a bit more like a PRS guitar, and that's mainly because the redesign of the neck. It's still a bolt-on, it still has single coil pickups, and again, it still has the unique bridge. These are things that PRS usually doesn't do. But just the change of the neck alone makes it feel more like a PRS guitar to me, and I really like that. And the great benefit about this is that before, if you wanted a chunky neck with this Silver Sky model, you had to spend a lot more money to get the core version. This to me now feels like a substitute for the core version considering the price. And of course, for everyone who doesn't like a chunky neck, you can get the original Silver Sky SC, and you have that guitar as well. So I think this redesign was a great move for PRS. It's the one that I would personally choose, but definitely try them both before making your decision. By the way, I'm Andre Flood. Check out all of my links below, and I'll talk to you soon.